As soon as I finished reading my letter, I felt it behind me. In our family, we do not inherit jewels, estates, or ancient relics. Our inheritance is knowledge. The knowledge that death will come for each of us on schedule and will announce its visit in advance, placing a white envelope in our hands. This tradition, or rather this curse, has stretched through centuries, and we, the Dalton family, have long resigned ourselves to its inevitability. From childhood, we are taught rules, simple as a guillotine blade and just as merciless. The first rule: never, under any circumstances, read someone else's letter. The temptation to peek into the fate of a brother, sister, or father is a one-way ticket. The transgressor instantly receives their own envelope, and in it, a promise of death so terrible that it is impossible to imagine. This is the ultimate betrayal, and the punishment for it is instantaneous. The second rule: the letter cannot be destroyed. My great-uncle Samuel, a rebel by nature, tried. He burned it, tore it into tiny pieces, drowned it in the river. But the envelope reappeared every time, on the pillow, in a coat pocket, perfectly white and pristine. It seemed to mock human powerlessness, demonstrating that there is no escaping fate. The third rule requires opening the letter immediately. Delay is tantamount to disobedience. He who tries to postpone the inevitable dies in agony that stretches for hours or even days. The power behind these letters tolerates no indecision. It demands submission. And the last, most stringent taboo: one cannot read the letter even after the addressee's death. This is a desecration of memory, an intrusion into a secret that belongs only to the deceased and to that invisible entity that controls us. The consequences of this violation are so horrific that they are spoken of only in whispers, as the most terrible sin. I, Chris Dalton, grew up in an old house whose walls seemed permeated with this fear. Every creak of the floorboards, every draft that roamed the corridors reminded me of the invisible observer. We didn't talk about it at dinner, but the topic was always present in the air, heavy, oppressive, like a tombstone. We learned to live with it, to accept it as a given, but deep down, each of us waited in horror for our day, the day when the postman of fate would knock on our door. So that we would not forget the seriousness of the rules, the family had its legends, eerie and true stories that served as a perpetual reminder. They were our history, written in blood and tears. My grandfather, Arthur Dalton, was a calm and sensible man. When his time came, he received a letter at breakfast. He silently read it, folded the sheet, and put it in his breast pocket. "Well," he told my grandmother, "I have a whole day left to fix the roof and enjoy the sunset." That night, he died in his sleep, with a slight smile on his lips. His story was an example to us of how to accept one's fate, with dignity and without fear. It was a good death. But there were others, those that made the blood run cold. The most terrifying of them was the story of my Aunt Stephanie and her brother Jake. They were twins, incredibly close. When Jake received his letter, Stephanie couldn't bear it. She couldn't come to terms with the thought of losing her brother. At night, while he slept, she stole the envelope from under his pillow and, trembling with fear and tears, read it. The next morning, Jake was found dead in his bed. He died peacefully, in his sleep, as written in his letter. And Stephanie disappeared. They searched for her for weeks, combing forests and fields, but to no avail. The only thing left of her were her eyes. 2 blue eyes, lying on her bedroom windowsill, filled with frozen, unspeakable horror. A few years later, my mother, then a very small girl, was playing in the forest near an old oak tree, and she saw her. The creature that was once her sister emerged from behind the trees. She was thin, emaciated, dressed in rags, but the most terrifying thing was her eyes. Or rather, their absence. In their place gaped 2 bloody, empty eye sockets. The creature silently looked at my mother and then disappeared into the thickets. No one ever saw her again. This story confirmed the worst fears. Violation of the rules is punished not just by death, but by something far more terrible. You become the property of that dark force, doomed to eternal suffering. I had dreaded my 28th birthday my entire life. In our family, few lived to old age, and now that day had arrived. I woke up with a heavy feeling in my chest, as if a stone lay upon it. I tried to distract myself, busying myself with mundane tasks, but the anxiety wouldn't leave me. The letter appeared at noon. I went into the kitchen to pour myself a glass of water. On the table, where nothing had been a minute ago, it lay. A perfectly white, impeccably smooth envelope. No stamp, no address. Just an envelope, waiting for me. My heart pounded, my palms sweated. I stood and stared at it, and the whole world narrowed to that small rectangle of paper. All the stories I had heard since childhood flashed through my mind. The story of my grandfather, the story of Stephanie, the story of Uncle Samuel. I knew I had to act. Delay would only make things worse. With trembling fingers, I picked up the envelope. The paper felt strangely cold to the touch. I slowly broke the invisible seal and pulled out a sheet. The text was written in a clear calligraphy hand that could not be mistaken for anyone else's. I began to read. The words were simple and dispassionate, describing the last hours of my life. And strangely, instead of panic, I felt a strange calm. The uncertainty that had tormented me my whole life disappeared. Now I knew. I had one more day, and I knew what to do with it. This letter did not break me. On the contrary, it gave me determination. The determination to break the most important rule. In our family, there was another tradition, though unwritten. The letters of the deceased were never thrown away. They were placed in an old iron-bound chest kept in the attic of the ancestral home. It was our family archive, our mausoleum. No one ever dared to look inside after a letter had been placed there. It would be tantamount to dancing on graves. But now, with my own grave already dug, I had nothing to fear. I drove to the old house. I climbed to the dusty attic where the air was heavy with the smell of old wood and oblivion. The chest stood in the corner, covered in cobwebs. I felt a chill run down my spine. This place was sacred, forbidden, but I hadn't come here to pray. The lock was old and rusty, but I broke it with one blow of a hammer. With a loud creak, the lid lifted. Inside, neatly folded, lay hundreds of white envelopes, the letters of my ancestors, silent witnesses to centuries of fear and submission. I began to read. The first was a letter from my grandmother, Eleonora. She died in her garden, tending to roses. The letter said, "My dear child, you love your flowers so much. Today, when the sun touches the horizon, your heart will stop among them. It will be peaceful." Then, my father's letter. He died in a car accident. "My stubborn child, your love of speed will be your undoing today. On the bend near the old bridge, you will lose control. Be ready." I read one letter after another. All of them were written in the same style. condescending, authoritative, and in each of them, the author called the recipient my child. These were not just predictions, these were commands from some omnipotent, inexorable entity that considered our family its property, its toys. I realized that we were not cursed, we were controlled. We were herded like a flock of sheep led to slaughter at a predetermined time. After sitting in the attic for several hours, I felt a strange connection with those who came before me. Their fear, their submission, their last moments, all of it was now a part of me. I was no longer alone in my horror. I was the last in a long line of victims, and I decided to meet my fate with open eyes. I took my own letter from my pocket. I already knew its text by heart, but now, in light of the discoveries, I wanted to reread it. Dust danced in the beam of light that pierced through the dirty window. A dead silence reigned around me. I unrolled the sheet. My voice sounded strangely loud in this quiet place. "My curious boy," I read aloud, "you have always sought knowledge. Today, your curiosity will lead you to the old attic, where you will learn the truth about your family. You will read the letters of those who came before you, and you will understand the nature of my power." Up to this point, everything was correct. I was indeed here. I had indeed read everything. But then came the last paragraph, the one I couldn't fully grasp before. Now its meaning was crystal clear and horrifying. I took a deep breath and continued reading, feeling an icy chill on the back of my neck. "I'm sorry, my child, but the man standing behind you will take you now. Farewell." The creak of the floorboard behind me sounded louder than a clap of thunder.